Hey folks, hacking this and that. Back again with another quick tutorial video. I want to show you something I figured out how to do over the weekend. I had tried this a couple times in the past. I'm pretty sure the problem I was having was at the time my Google Suite was logged in with my work profile, which then has all kinds of corporate security on it and wasn't able to get things working. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this, or at least the data from it, and create this. So how do we do that? Um, Couple of things that need to be done, and I will start in console. And we are going to make add an integration. So we'll start with this, and pretty simple. It wants the Google Form ID. So how do we get a Google Form ID? The first thing we need to do is go to Google Forms, and you'll see my weekend attempt. I'm going to create a new one. And I will call this as soon as my browser catches up with me here. Yeah, I don't need a tutorial on that. We'll call this LHT65-new. Basically what you need to do is create the questions of the data that you want stored in Google Sheet. So the first thing I am going to do is figure out what are my data points. Now, the easiest way to do this is to figure out what data can be decoded from the payload. If you go to Helium GitHub in the console decoders, you will find the decoder for the LHT65. This is a special bunch of JavaScript, basically, but there's some things that are added in this particular one that make it a little unique. So while I could run through this and sort of break it down for you, I am by no means a JavaScript developer. I can read a lot of code, I don't write a lot of code, but I happen to have the wrong tab. Let's try this tab. I happen to have a decoder function already set up, which is a little distilled from all of that. So in my payload, it's going to give me a couple of external let's try that again. External sensor options. So the LHT65s have the external probe. You can use it without a sensor. You can use the temp sensor. You can do a interrupt. You can do a luminance sensor. So that's our first blob of information. Then we get into battery, the temp centigrade, SHT. That is the internal temperature sensor. The hum SHT, that's the internal humidity. And then we have temp C DS, which is the probe. And those are the ones that I'm particularly interested in. So I'm going to pause there, and there's more stuff depending on whether the different probe options are connected, but that's the important stuff. I need to grab two temps, a humidity, and a battery. And in order to do that, I come over here and I set up my first question. So the first question is battery V, and I need this to be a short answer. This is the easiest way to store things into Google Sheets. You can then change the data type when you start doing analysis on it. So capture it as short answers. Next question will be temp C underscore SHT. Next question is humidity SHT and temp C underscore DS for the probe. what else did I have in there? External sensor. You know what? I'm going to skip that this time because it's always going to be the same. It's not going to change. So I don't see the significance of including that. So once I have those settings, or sorry, my template inputs, I need to not make it a quiz. What you're looking for is the required sign-in. And because I'm using a Gmail account, I am pretty sure that I am not going to have that option. But if you're on a business account, you may have to remove the require sign-in option. Although that's what I did try the first couple of times, I did have some additional issues with it. Responses. Now we need to tell Google Form what to do with this data. So if you come over to responses and you create spreadsheet, it says, would you like to create a new sheet? And we'll go, yes, please, create a new sheet. And then it's going to go ahead and open up that sheet for me. So we have our input form and we have our data repository, the Google Sheet. We need to come back to the form and we're going to send as a link, and we're going to copy that URL. And then we're going to come back to console, and we're going to go back to our integration and add Google Sheet, add integration. Now, it wants the form ID. I am not a fan of how they've set this up. If Google makes changes to the URL structure, it is hard-coded in the application how to access this form ID. I would rather give it the full URL. That's just a personal preference. But in order to make this work, you need to paste in your URL and then remove the tail end and head end of the URL so that you just have the form ID. Then you go ahead and click Get Google Form Fields. It will connect to Google and retrieve the form entry variables for inserting the data. Then we generate a function. This is just a quick way to write the template with those values. So we're going to generate template, and then we need to name the integration. And we're going to call this LHT65 new. Now, we can go ahead and edit the function here, or click add, go back to the function afterwards and edit the input. I'm going to do that just so I don't lose track of which tab I'm on and make a mess of this video. So add integration, and should be good. Just double check things here. Template. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to come back over to my function and go into LHT65 new. And this is a custom decoder. And there are my 4 form variables. Now, from here, what we need to do is tell console which of the decoded payload values go into those particular variables. This is where that custom decoder that you got on console. So there's the battery voltage, for example. But as I said, I have an integration, or sorry, a function that I have already set up that I want to use to get that information. So I'm going to go back to all functions, go into my custom function here, and this block here is what I am looking for. So my battery value is retrieved by this string here. And I'm just going to throw this on a notepad, which I think I still had left over. No, I don't have it left over. Okay. So quickly grab these. Again, this is going to vary depending on the sensor you have. Hopefully the decoder is documented and you can break down the various values so that you can create this string. And yes, this is going to be some pretty nerdy math if you're not a developer. I'm not a developer, I'm a hack. So I will pretend that I know what most of this is. As I said, I read far more code than I write. But this one has a little more logic in it. And that's because it's trying to determine if it's the remote temperature probe. So I'm going to quickly jump back over to functions, LHT65 new, and I need to replace this string. Now, it is here as a string because that is the necessary formatting to get the custom script to load. You do not put your decoder inside the quotations because you're not putting in a string. So we're going to go ahead and paste that first one, which was our battery voltage. And then I'm going to grab my temp SHT. My humidity. Now, one of the things I will show you, oops, just looked at that, and I think I save changes. I think I trimmed too much on my copy paste here. So let me quickly jump back here just to be sure, because I am pretty confident. Yeah. Well, I'm here now. I apologize for doing this as a cheat. Because I already had it set up, but you get the point. We're just trying to convert decoded values into standard values that can be inserted into a Google Sheet. Okay, so we're going to break down battery the SHT, the humidity, and the temp DS, the remote probe. And that is it for decoding. And I say that emphatically because when you insert stuff into Google Forms like this, you're actually taking the URL of the form and then doing URL encoded values after the form. So it needs to serialize this data. So this is where this additional function comes into, which is going to take these values and URL encode them and then append them to the URL and then call the URL of the form so that the data gets inserted. So final save changes here. And then I need to go to my flow. So you can see I already have a bunch of stuff coming off of this one pore sensor, but here's my new function and my new integration, and I'll just add an additional data stream from my sensor. And then I'm going to go back over to device, go into my device, and watch some live data. So there's my flow. Well, actually, this middle one. My last uplink was 4 minutes ago. There it is, way over there. So I'm going to force an uplink on this. And I should see event ID 900 come in. There it is. And we have a uplink. I come over to my integrations. There's my LHT65 new. Successfully requested integration, got a successful response. What does that look like for us? That means if I come back over here, and I think I just chose the wrong Google Sheet. Yep. We have data. So there you go. Can let this run. Some of the cool things you can do that may not be available in your integration. I'm not going to call out any particular integration, but if you are a spreadsheet user, you understand the power of this. Do diff logic on your timestamps to tell if it's greater than the 20-minute interval that it's supposed to be. You can do pivot tables, all sorts of nerdy math stuff that can be done on this data to help you understand the application that you're currently using them for. It's also, as you can tell, free, assuming you're a Google user. And that's about it. So I hope that covers everything that you might have needed to learn in regards to Google Sheet integration. If you have any questions, hit me up. I'm always open. DMs are open. Yeah, best of luck on your projects and have an awesome day.